Hello, everybody. Okay, so I imagine that some people think I'm cheating with these experiments, because what we've done is we've looked at all the senses to say that the external world rises in awareness. It's not even there is no external world. Now, it seems like it's cheating because clearly if we separate these things out so much, then we can see that touch arises in awareness, that the sensation of touching something, the smell of something arises in awareness, the sight of something arises in awareness. And what's happening is there's something out there beyond our awareness which is producing all of this. So it's producing the vision, it's not really producing the vision, but it's what we see, it's what we smell, it's what we hear and taste, So, but what we're looking at is we're looking at the other way around. So we're not saying that there's something out there which is producing all these different things. What we've done in the analysis, we've just said, this is in awareness, so the sight is in awareness, the sound is in awareness, the hearing is in awareness, and so therefore they're all in awareness. There is no pointing to outside of awareness. They're all separate. Now, the thing is that when our senses combine, it seems more real because they're kind of pointing at the same thing. It's like when different witnesses see a bank robbery and they all report the same thing, then it must be true that there is a bank robbery, that there was a bank robbery. And so when, we see an apple and we pick it up and it feels like an apple, it must be an apple. Bite it and it tastes like an apple, this is definitely an apple. We can get confused by our senses sometimes, You pick up something smells like strawberries and you eat it and you discover it's actually a pencil eraser. So we can get tripped up, but these things kind of make it absolutely sure that there is something out there. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to show how this isn't the case. The first step is to look at what philosophers call common sensibles. So there's some properties of things which can be witnessed by various different senses. So things like movement, size, rest, number, and shape can be witnessed by more than one sense. So whereas we've got things like smell, which is really, you can't see a smell, you can't hear a smell, and then you've got heat, you can't see heat. We learn, though, through our lives that red means hot, blue means cold, but it's not always right, white hot. So we can learn these, but things like taste, you can't see a taste, you can't hear a taste. These are not common sensibles. These kind of standalone subjective things. Terrible. But the common sensibles, so things like movement, you see something moving, you can hear it moving, maybe a train, and you can put your hand on it and you can feel it moving. So therefore it must be moving. The same thing is access to different senses. So the question is, if you have an apple and it feels like an apple and looks like an apple, does that mean that there's a real apple outside of experience producing this? Or are these just arising in awareness and the connection is a thought that ties it all together? So we can look at it first with just a simple analysis. So if the sight of the apple doesn't prove that there is an apple, as we did with the vision experiment, and the touch of the apple doesn't prove that there is an apple, as we did in the touch experiment, then no apple and no apple means that there's nothing producing these. There's nothing outside awareness producing these, because no apple plus no apple is no apple. But you could argue against that. You could say, well, but I don't know what you could say, but you could say that there's still an apple. There was a test, though. Somebody came up with a problem in 1688. William Molyneux wrote a letter to John Locke presenting this problem that became known as the Molyneux problem. So what if a child was born with without sight, and he learnt how to differentiate, or he learned the shape of a globe and the shape of a cube. So he knew what a cube feels like, and he knew what a globe feels like. Now, what would happen if he regained his sight? Without touching these two objects, would he be able to say, that is the sphere and that is the globe? That is the globe and that is the cube. And we would say, of course he can, because he's touched them. He knows that one's round, and he knows that one's square. So clearly he knows that. And with any of the other common sensibles, like number, so you see there's two dice, and you see there's two dice, you can count them, you pick them up, and there's two dice. So it's clearly two dice. Now, would he be able to tell what they were without touching them? So saying, really, is it a learnt behavior that something that looks round has this feeling, this certain feeling, which we now call round? And 40 years later, in 1728, a surgeon called William Chiseldon, he did this experiment, not an experiment, he did an operation on a boy where the boy had cataracts and he'd never been able to see. But he had learned the difference, or learned the shape of a cube and a globe. And they restored his sight, and he didn't know which one was which. So even though he knew what a round globe feels like, what an apple feels like, what an orange feels like, he wasn't able to say that that's round and that's square. So these were actually learnt. Even though they feel like they're really connected to us, it's a learnt behavior, just like when something is red, it feels hot. Another learnt behavior that we can see is learnt. Now, this has actually been demonstrated many times since then, in the last few hundred years. And it's common knowledge that when blind people regain their sight, or for the first time they see, they have trouble recognizing objects that they know well by touch. They don't know what they're supposed to look like with sight. And I think they have problems with depth of vision and things like this. All of these ideas are actually learned. So this tells us that this connection is thought. It's a learned habit to connect these two shapes together. And these things arise in awareness separately, and we, after the fact, use thought to tie them together. So, now, just a point before I finish. Here we are in these experiments. We've basically proved through our direct experience that there's nothing outside our awareness, nothing that's actually causing these things to arise in awareness. Now, it seems a bit like solipsism, and it kind of is. It's actually a type of analysis. This direct path is an analysis of your direct experience. And so you don't speculate about the existence of other minds. We're just working on this. And at the moment, we're just on the external world. We've proved it to be arising in consciousness, and there's nothing that it's pointing to outside of consciousness. There's no pointer from the thing that we see to the thing outside consciousness. That's a thought that makes that. It's not actually inherent in the actual sense. So we're saying that basically everything just arises in my awareness, and it sounds like solipsism. But as we continue and we look at the body and the mind, we're also going to deconstruct the body and the mind. And so you're going to go as well. So, people are chasing the destruction of the ego, but we're going to do it systematically. We're just going to show how the ego is just a bunch of thoughts that arise, and it doesn't mean that there's actually a you there. And when we eliminate the you, then there is no there's no solipsism, because it's not, everything is not arising in your mind, and there's no other minds. It's just things aren't arising in your mind either. Your mind's insentient. Your body is insentient. Everything is arising in consciousness, my consciousness, and all the consciousness. Everything is consciousness. And whether other people are conscious, we don't actually approach that in this analysis. It's going to be enough, believe me. Just what we do. When we get to the mind, it's going to take everything to pieces. Now, Bernardo Kastrup, I'm a big fan of Bernardo Kastrup. He takes a scientific approach, philosophical approach, and he has this model of analytic idealism, which says that there is the universal mind, the mind at large, and you are a dissociation, basically, like the multiple personality disorder. Within the big mind, there's little mind split off. Maybe because of trauma, who knows? But that's his theory. So, and then what we see is the world is a representation. It looks physical, but it's a representation of something mental outside our direct experience. So it's like the dashboard of an aeroplane, he says. So in his model, there is an external world. And the external world is mental, is a thought. And I don't know if really thought, but it's certainly mental consciousness. And what we see, an apple, for example, or a brain is a representation of something mental. So it's a representation of mental processes, which is why it correlates so well, because it's what we see as a brain. It really is a physical representation of what's real outside our experience. Now, this is taking a different approach. This is taking an approach which could be true, but where we are assuming that there is an external world. And this can't be proven, doesn't mean it's not true, but what we're doing with this direct path is really just looking at our direct experience and really just looking at what we can see. So it's not solipsism. It is a style of Advaita Vedanta, though, because you have, I think it's called Bahu Jiva Vada, which is multiple jiva, where you start saying, okay, the world is real, there are other jivas. There's Shankaracharya taught this approach. And then there is this direct approach of Atmananda Krishna Menon, Great Good, etc., which is Eka Jiva Vada, which is one jiva, which is the same thing. It's not solipsism either, but is exploring from just your personal viewpoint without speculating on anything. And we don't need to take into account these two truths, two levels of truth, but we still have to play the game that we're in. So we still, despite the fact we know the truth, we still participate in the world more fully than ever before, because we know it's a game, it's a dream, it's a play, it's a work of art we're creating. So I think that's all. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.